Hey James, good morning and happy Friday.
Howdy, Reed. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's end of week, and right after this, I'm actually hopping in a car and driving up into the mountains to Leavenworth. Cute
Oh,
cute little Bavarian, fake Bavarian town that we have in the Northwest. If you haven't heard of it, but it's yeah, little weekend getaway. How about yourself?
nice. This weekend I'm probably going to be doing a bunch of prep work for my wife and I were volunteering at an upcoming event this I guess it's next month where we'll be teaching kids about visualization, data visualization with Python. So I'll probably be putting in some work
Interesting.
on that. Yeah.
I like you're going for hard mode immediately. Like, no, we're not going to do draggy, clicky, droppy into Power BI. We're going to have you code Python for visualizations.
Well, I'm going to give them, a lot of starter code first of all, but these are also kids that have been
Fair.
doing code already. This is at
Okay,
a
okay,
week long, like tech camp, so
that's
a lot of
cool.
them are already going to be somewhat familiar with, even if they haven't used Python, they will done other coding up to that point. So
Okay,
yeah,
okay. So they're not they've already been swimming in the adult pool for a little bit.
yep, yep. These are kids who are generally on the underprivileged side of things, but they're also ones who have been basically identified as talented and driven, and so we're trying to like give them a leg up and give them a like a foot in the door to the industry, whatever it is that they want to do with their careers. So
That's cool.
kind of the things
My
that I wish that
equivalent,
somebody had done for
yeah,
me when I was that age. Like I didn't know I hadn't even touched code until I was already like mostly way through college.
yeah. I mean,
So.
I code well, in coding for me is mostly with Dax, but I dabble in Python. My equivalent of what those kids are doing is probably I got an A+ certification back in I was like
Mm,
16. That was like for
mm-hmm.
computer hardware and tech. So I remember having to learn how to thread an Ethernet cable and set up a token network, which were
Mm.
things
A
back in the day
token
and all
ring?
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A token ring network, which in my
Yeah.
mind is like, wait, like Lord of the Rings? Yeah.
The
Um,
Tolkien ring?
yeah, when they first said that, I thought it was
Right.
yeah, some two nerdy references in one. Both how many people left know what a token ring network is,
Right.
and two, yeah, from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Digressions aside, though, I'm happy to have you on today. I think we're gonna have a fun topic on community, certainly, and I think some new components and resources that are going to be available for people. So I think that's really cool. Based on the fact that you've also just mentioned you're doing some boot camp work, it seems like you definitely have a passion and time that you've put in a lot of different avenues to really kind of either standing up things or giving back within the community with some of the skill sets that you have.
Yep. When I first got into this industry, I got an internship, and I was in a completely different industry, hadn't touched tech in ages, and someone took a chance on me. They saw that I was passionate, and they saw that I had been doing a lot of extracurricular stuff outside of my normal job, trying to learn as much as I could about coding. And they apparently thought that that was enough to make me an intern and teach me everything from the ground up, from with SQL,
That's
Power
cool.
BI, and that sort of thing. So, like, someone took a chance on me. I think it's my responsibility to try to give that back as much as possible.
I I think it's a great way to to pay it forward to
Mm,
a degree. It's like it's something that helped you get to where you are. So it's like why not just reciprocate and turn that back around and stand
yep.
up the next person behind you.
Yep. And
Um,
ultimately, it makes my job
yeah.
a little easier too,
hmm
because what I'm doing. It's I can't do it alone, and the more I try to do it alone, the more frustrated I get. So being surrounded by people in my own organization, and even just helping foster passion about this kind of stuff in the local community, makes it more likely that I'll be able to rely on other people as to help me make a bigger impact. So it's enlightened self interest to a certain extent.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's going down the rabbit hole of whether or not there's such thing as true altruism versus partial altruism and all that. But
Oh,
either way,
we're gonna do
as
philosophy today.
right, yeah. Either way, as long as I'd say is like any degree of paying it forward, regardless of the motivation behind it, if it's helping someone else, I think that it's a great contribution back. And I mean, I partially with these live streams and other stuff, like I obviously get some benefit out of it. It's an exposure thing, but I do think that like I really make an effort to try to actually not only diversify the speakers that I have in terms of their skills, backgrounds, and knowledge sets, but really just trying to hit a wide, both a breadth and a depth of information, just to provide people out there with an increased art of possible of what's available with the tools and just um, as much information as they can get. So, and I learned stuff on a lot of these too. So 108
Hmm.
streams, 108 hours worth of moderating and everything else, I've absorbed quite a bit of information from
Yep.
this too. Yeah.
Yep. The best way to learn is to teach, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's very true. I do want to, I think, for the people who are less familiar with you on the stream, either live or recorded, I do want to give a little background about yourself and kind of where you're coming from.
Yeah, sure. So I'm James Bartlett. My handle on pretty much everywhere is James D. Bartlett 3. It's 3 because I'm the third. I had my dad and my granddad before me with the same name. That didn't get confusing at all. Then I did some tech while I was in college, but I was working in tech, but not studying tech, unfortunately. Basically, the class that would have got me into tech basically turned me off to it at the time. This was an intro. It was an intro to Java course, and of course, they were teaching it with just Notepad.exe. There was no IDE. IDEs existed at the time, but we weren't allowed to use it. Anyway, so I got turned off to tech, and I thought, you know what, I'll just go study just regular business administration. That was what my degree ended up being in. So I did a bit of web development in college, and I was a help desk technician at the College of Business and that sort of thing. So I had a background in computers, and I got really heavily into Linux for a while. So I was definitely a nerd, but I did not do it professionally. So when I graduated from college, because I hadn't been doing any of it professionally, and I hadn't studied it like for my degree, I couldn't get a job in tech. So my career bounced around all over the place. I started off in banking, went into real estate. Then I left real estate and did music. I was a starving artist for a little while. I had a residency at the top nightclub in the country in Denver, Colorado for a little while. And then after, what's that?
Was it the church?
That's funny. You know about the church. It's actually, it was actually called.
My brother grew up in Denver, so I've probably over the years been to most of the clubs there.
Yep. The church was big. Beta nightclub was the one that was actually
you were okay. Yeah, I've been to Beta a few times. Really good sound system there, if I remember.
Function 1, best in the world, but it's closed now. Anyway, again, digress. But after, I again bouncing all around all over the place. When I ran out of money in my starving artist phase, I said, I guess I got to go get another big boy job. And so I went and I decided, I've always had a bit of a passion for the sciences, so I studied. I got into pharmacy stuff, so I became a pharmacy technician, certified, and all that kind of stuff. And then after a while, I was realizing, you know what, I can't go any further in that career without actually becoming a pharmacist, and I didn't want to spend 6 years in pharmacy school. So I thought, maybe I should try the tech thing again. So I started doing some online boot camps, did some programs through a website called Udacity, founded by a former Googler, and that was when I got. Basically, I ended up randomly meeting basically the head of the data and analytics department for an organization in the area here in Des Moines called Hy-Vee. It's a regional grocery chain, and he basically took a chance on me and said, hey, you're it looks like you're passionate about this stuff. You want to learn about data, and basically he said you want to learn about reports. And at the time I was like, reports, as in like TPS reports, and. But when he said, no, it's about data analysis, and I said, okay, all right, tell me more. And then, I went to, I took that internship, and fortunately it was a paid internship, so I was able to leave my pharmacy technician job. And 6 months later, I had my full-time job there. And then a year and a half after that, I was recruited by Des Moines University to run their BI, basically run their BI operations. So I've been their Power BI tenant administrator. Now I'm their Fabric administrator. And that's my background.
I mean, I like the fact that, similar to, I think, my career, I did try to get into tech, but I got very close, did not have enough technical background, and ended up bouncing around a lot of different things between psych to, I worked with autistic kids for about 3 or 4 years, but it's one of those where you end up in a very meandering journey before you finally kind of arrive in that place. And so I definitely see some parallels with that, but it's one of the reasons that I tell. Yeah, and I tell a lot of people, it's like, I'm 23 and I haven't found my career yet. Man, like I entered tech at like 27, 28, and I, now very successful, I think, in it. But it took me a long time. Like most of my 20s were finding myself. So I tried to tell everyone, like, one, it's not a race, and two, you have a lot of time in life to figure out where your career is. You don't need to have stuff figured out when you graduate college at like 22, 23.
Yep. I think that, like, if people try to rush it, if they try to figure out too early, they'll end up botching it. I think that was kind of my problem, is that I basically was trying to focus on, what can I do? I should have basically just let my experiences guide me, and And basically I
Yep.
ended up with my undergrad in a degree that I've never used, never once had a job in human resources management. But I know a bit about human resources. So I mean, it's kind of funny
Yep.
because when I took that first job at Hy-Vee, it was interesting because they ended up almost immediately putting me in a cross-functional role where I was supporting finance, accounting, pharmacy, which is because a retail grocery store
Uh-huh.
with a pharmacy, and the human resources. So it was like my banking background for the accounting and finance, my human resources degree, and my experience working in a pharmacy all worked together to like give me the background to embed in those teams and really help give them a leg up. So it was interesting because like you would have thought that I was pinballing all over the place totally randomly,
Yep.
but and I don't really believe in fate or any of that kind of stuff, but it almost seems like I was destined to do that thing. And so
So
and now
it's
I'm
like the
working for a
slumdog.
medical school.
You're the slumdog millionaire of tech.
Haven't made my first million yet, but
True. Well, it's the same kind of like it's all those right circumstances that lead to having the right information to finally allow for that kind of serendipitous moment to happen at the end of the journey.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yep.
No, I think that's super cool. And I mean, in general, it's just, I've met more than enough people that I think took a bit of time to kind of figure out where they are. But once you've settled it, like it's really just that the perfect storm scenario of like everything just finally aligned and I have the right path and track in life.
Yep.
Um, so I think today we were going to talk about this new community. I don't know if I'd call it a platform. Maybe that's the wrong choice of words. But this new program that you kind of built out, the Data Dojo. I'm
Mhm.
really curious about that. And again, anything community based is something that I think really helps to kind of the rising waters raise all ships scenario with those.
Right.
So I think it's nice to have one more kind of resource available for individuals if you want to start talking about that.
Mhm. Yeah, so the concept of the Data Dojo is actually not new. I mean, the name is kinda, but the concept of what they call community of practice has been around since the early '90s, I think. I've got resources that we'll get to later where there's
Mm-hmm.
a quote from the person who originated the idea. But the idea is of basically getting a bunch of people together from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, and that sort of thing, around a common goal, around a common interest, and sharing and collaborating, sort of ignoring all exterior connections or hierarchies or that sort of thing. So, and that's what we're doing at the Des Moines University Data Dojo, and I'll call it the Data Dojo for short from here on out. But yeah, it's communities of practice don't have to be only within an organization. They can be just, it could be like a knitting group or a book club or that sort of thing, right? But this is the way that I'm implementing it is a group within one organization. So everybody that's a member is also an employee of the organization. So
And I think the evolution, as you're mentioning, I mean, it's the global concept of this is something that's been around for a while, but I think applying this within the realm of our particular Power BI community, I've not seen anybody else kind of approach that quite to this from this angle. So it's a kind of a refreshing new take on it, I think.
mhm. Well, in a way, I mean, it's, again, we're not really doing anything new. This is basically just branding the concept of
Yep.
decentralized or self-service BI.
Hmm.
And I think that framing it this way makes it a lot easier to get people interested in it than saying, "Oh, I just want you to do my work for me." And
Yeah.
that's the way that traditionally a
Yeah.
lot of businesses have said when centralized IT and BI wants to start enabling them with self-service BI. A lot of times they've said, "Well, wait, you just want me to do your job for you?" And it's more about like, hey,
Yeah.
it's clear from the length of the backlog and from the resources that we have in this organization, the number of labor hours that we can put into this, that we're never going to be able to get to certain projects in a timely fashion. So why not provide the tools, resources, the knowledge, and that kind of thing to the people who are most likely to need it soon.
Yep.
And especially because the tools are now available to where people don't have to be a technical person to make a usable, valuable report for themselves, for their own little business unit, that sort of thing, that actually gives them valuable insights to help drive the business. So because people don't have to learn how to code anymore to make it something that works, that helps move the business, that moves the needle, then why not empower them as much as possible? So
Agreed.
that's
As long as these centralized data sets and structures have been properly built, designed, promoted, certified, all that stuff. Yeah.
right. But part of it's also teaching them best practices. Like if there isn't something formalized like the Data Dojo, and you basically just start telling people go make your own stuff, then there's going to be bad practices all over the place. You're going to have bidirectional filtering, many to many's joins, and you're going to have every possible best practices analysis red flag in the book. And believe me, because I've seen it. This is the way that it was when I arrived at the organization. The first thing I did was I basically downloaded every PBIX that I could find from the web service, from Power BI service, and I started looking through them all, and I basically was going, oh my God, we have so much work to do. A lot of the people who had made them had left the organization, so they were basically just these these cryptic artifacts that were left around, and nobody really knew how to work with them. And so part of the goal of this is to try to prevent that kind of thing from happening in the future. If someone's making something, hopefully if they've been going to something like the Data Dojo, they will have learned about things like documentation, and about collaborating with at least one other person, so that if they end up on vacation or extended medical leave or something like that, then that asset or that the artifact doesn't get completely abandoned, and doesn't turn into some black box kind of thing. So
very cool. Do you have any so I'm a visual learner. Do we have anything to kind of show that the concept of this might materialize to a degree?
Well, I have plenty of graphics and stuff in the presentation that I prepared here, if that's what you mean.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can flip over to that whenever you're ready.
All right. Sure. Yeah, let's go ahead. All right. So, I guess we've kind of already done the intro to myself here, so I can skip through this. There's me cosplaying as Sub-Zero for the video game people out there. All right, so quick little agenda here. We're going to go over the founding of the Data Dojo. That would be, sort of why I started it. Calling all data ninjas is the recruitment process. Then I'm going to also go over the first two events or workshops that we had, and kind of talk about the topics that we covered in those, to kind of give a sort of a framework for somebody who might be thinking about doing some workshops for them in their own organization, what kinds of stuff you might want to talk about in your first few, to kind of get everybody on the same page. I also want to come completely clean and say that there was a big setback after workshop number 2, and most of it was my fault. And so I want to talk about the mistakes I made there, and hopefully the people who are tuning in here will be able to understand why I made those mistakes, and look out for make sure they don't fall into those same traps that I did. And then finally, the Data Dojo Strikes Back is the step where the plans I'm making to bring us back from that from those mistakes that I made, and get us back up to speed. Then I also have a list of resources for people who want to learn more about communities of practice, for people who want to learn more about how communities of practice fit into the overall Power BI adoption roadmap, the relationships between the community of practice and the center of excellence, which a lot of people get those mixed up, but they're related concepts, but not the same thing. And then we'll have the Q&A session at the end. All right, so starting off, founding the Data Dojo. So we probably ought to start with defining what is a community practice. We kind of already went over this a little bit, but this is the official quote from I believe it was Etienne Wenger, trainer, who originally came up with this idea back in I think the early 90s. This is a later quote. So the quote is: communities of practice are groups of people who share a concern or passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. So like I said, it's not entirely bound within an organization. It's not necessary for it to always be people from the same organization. A community practice could also be, for instance, a Power BI meetup group in an area. So it could be the people from different organizations who get together at this meetup and share knowledge with each other. This is, and I actually am the co-organizer of the Iowa Power BI user group, and we're going through some restructuring on that right now, but more to come on that. as I mentioned before, it's important to point out that the community of practice is not the same thing as the center of excellence here. So, and I've got that in sequel for to make sure that everybody pays attention to it. All right, moving on. So where the community of practice overlaps with the center of excellence, actually the center of excellence in if it's done properly, the center of excellence will be a part of a community of practice within an organization. So and the center of excellence is the centralized component, the part where this would be like the actual data modelers, the people who are creating the golden data sets or the single source of truth, certified data sets, certified data flows, that sort of thing. Basically, these are the empowerers or the enablers, the people who are making the infrastructure that allow the non-technical people to really blossom and make the reports and dashboards and things like that are providing the value to the business. So obviously you've got your self-service content creators and subject matter experts here. This is basically like for right now, most of the members of the Data Dojo at my organization are pretty much these people. And then we have these content consumers here who sometimes, I think in the future, I may end up having more people from the broader Des Moines University organization begin joining the Data Dojo just to kind of like watch and learn what's coming up, and maybe start learning the lingo, and perhaps as a way to have conversations with the content creators and say, this is what we would really like if you could create. These are most of the time going to be people who are in the same teams and the same org units that the subject matter experts and champions are in, but maybe are not they're not actually getting their own hands dirty with the report development and that sort of thing. So is there anything, Reed, that you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, well, I like the self-feeding cycle with champions also supporting each other as well. I think that's a nice little extra touch with that. But I'm as I mentioned earlier, very much a visual learner, and I think flowcharts and graphics like this are a great way to kind of represent and to show how the flow and tie in between all of these, and especially where information kind of flows from and into. Like we're looking at the one-to-many relationships with some of these. So yeah, and I think we already had some people in the chat just kind of like commenting on how this is nice to be able to tie in the CIE and the Power BI COP together. So yeah, good job on this.
Yeah, so this graphic actually comes from the adoption roadmap, the Power BI adoption roadmap, specifically from the community of practice section of that adoption roadmap.
Yeah, that's
if I'm
not
not mistaken.
Okay.
I believe this is Melissa Coates's baby, so or one of her many excellent resources on this topic. So I encourage anyone to go check out that link, and it should be available in the video description or potentially in the chat. So all right, so let's continue here. So this is the Data Dojo backstory, the problems that I identified, the reason why I figured that it was a good idea to get something like this going. So to give you a bit of background on Des Moines University, we're a graduate level medical school. It's basically all the people who are students are already, they've already got their undergraduate pre-med degree. And most of the faculty and staff are incredibly educated. Almost all of them have advanced degrees in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And so they're professionally, they are accustomed to looking at data and considering the evidence and that sort of thing for when they make decisions. And they're doing that from their profession, for medical. When they're thinking about how they want to treat a patient, that sort of thing. They look at the evidence. They look at scientific studies. They look at the peer-reviewed evidence, that kind of stuff. So fortunately for me, it's actually a lot easier for me than probably it is for most people to convince business stakeholders to do things according to what the data says, because that's something they're already familiar with. On the flip side of that, of course, these are people who are accustomed to getting lots and lots of data and being able to consume it and being able to make good data-driven decisions. They're not gut-driven decision makers or gastroanalytics, as I like to call it. And so because of this appetite for data that they have, it actually creates probably a stronger demand for good reports, and they're more likely to spot when there is some sort of glitch in the data. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I really love having stakeholders that will, that actually care about good data, but they also have really high standards. So Another big part that makes this a challenge is that DMU is a not-for-profit organization, so our budget really limits how we can, what kinds of data analytics toys we can pull in. We're, our Office 3 subscription with pro licenses for everyone in the organization. So that's great. It gives everybody the ability to be a Power BI report developer, but we sometimes are trying to figure out how we're going to do our premium capacities and that sort of thing. So it's that's a bit of a struggle sometimes as well. Obviously, this is there's the rising cost of education across the country, and we're doing everything we can to try to keep our costs low that our students can afford to get a good education. So whenever we can stretch a dollar, we do it. And so, like I said, that sometimes that's our options. And then of course, because of the fact that I am the only Power BI tenant administrator / Fabric person in the organization that's full-time doing that. We have a part-time person who is helping me out with stuff, but she's a contractor. So in terms of actual permanent full-time employees, I'm the only one that's working with Power BI data modeling stuff. We've got a DBA / data engineer, but as you might have mentioned, there's not enough people to go around for the enormous backlog of projects that people have been putting out there. And these are good ideas that people have been proposing for sometimes for years. And there's just no way we're ever going to get around to all of them if it's down to me to develop everything, especially if they keep coming back and saying, hey, can you move that graph over there and change the background color? Like, that's the kind of stuff that, it takes up time, but it's not actually utilizing my knowledge. It's just, making me move the mouse and click and things like that. So what we're trying to do here is to shift that to people who know what they want and can easily execute on that. So that was part 2 of the problem. Here's part 2 of the solution. So of course, the solution is to decentralize and democratize the data solution development process. So obviously, I'm still heavily involved in the data modeling, the data engineering, that kind of stuff that's happening in the Power BI service, things like data flows, data sets, row-level security, that kind of stuff. And I actually serve in a sort of consultant capacity for any of the sort of the champions or subject matter experts that are already out there in an organization doing a lot of their own work, but they'll run into some sort of situation where they encounter an error them, or they don't know how to do certain types of aggregations, or they need help with setting up row-level security, that sort of thing. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to set up this interdisciplinary knowledge sharing between the different org units, and I think I pretty much kind of covered the rest of the stuff on this slide here, but I think it's also important to point out here that this is a very Des Moines University anyway, and there's plenty of other organizations that are out there that are younger, but Des Moines University is about to turn 125 this year. This is an old organization with lots of pre-baked kind of assumptions about what each individual org unit ought to be doing and what kind of information they ought to be sharing with each other, and whether they ought to be basically blocking each other from doing things, like serving as misguided notions about serving as counterbalances to each other and that sort of thing. So part of what I'm trying to do with the Data Dojo is to help these people build professional working relationships that grow strong enough to where that actually transcends any preconceived notions that they have about what their business unit individually is supposed to be doing and whether they ought to be working with a different business unit, and to try to basically build these sort of drill tunnels through the silo walls and get everybody interconnected so that we can, because really everybody in the organization, everybody that's an employee is certified for HIPAA and FERPA, so we don't have to worry about the implications of sharing data amongst the organization, but it is it's sometimes people still have some resistance to it. I'm not trying to get them to break any rules that may be in place. If there's a policy that says that they shouldn't be sharing data with other parts of the organization, certainly I don't want them to do that. But I think that a lot of times the biggest barrier there is actually all in their heads. So, all right, we'll move on here. So next, I needed some founding principles. I needed to basically set the maybe not rules, but some things that we believe in the Data Dojo to try to get everybody to kind of get on the same page. So first of all, we welcome anyone to join. There's no gatekeeping allowed. There's no prerequisites technically. We don't want anyone to feel like they can't join because they don't know enough about data or they never coded before, any of that stuff. The only prerequisite is if they're interested in learning more. That's it. So next, our events and activities are 100% optional. There's no obligation to attend a certain number of them. There's none that are, none of these meetings are mandatory. They're free to attend as many or as few as they like. And we don't want to guilt anybody for not showing up.
Okay.
We record all of our sessions, so even if they can't make it for the for the live session, they can always watch it later. Try to be as flexible as possible. We also encourage our members to they are encouraged but never required to share their knowledge with each other and collaborate. Some people are going to be sort of nervous about sharing knowledge with each other, especially if they're still sort of new and they're going to, well, wait a second, I barely know what I'm doing. How am I going to teach somebody else? And until they gain enough confidence to where they feel comfortable doing it, we don't want to push them to it, but we do want to encourage people to, as much as possible, share the knowledge that they have. And we'll get to that here a little bit more here. So next is we facilitate communication and knowledge sharing between our members. Two ways we do that. One, as I mentioned before, the interactive events. These are where we get everybody together either in person, virtual, or a hybrid kind of thing, and we have somebody presenting, and then there should be also an unstructured segment where people collaborate with each other, we do some breakout groups, that kinds of thing. So the other part, and this is where I guess you could say the interactive events, those are the synchronous events. Asynchronous side, this could work in many different ways, but in our organization, I created a Yammer group. Yammer is a Microsoft product. It's kind of like an organizational social media. It's kind of like how Facebook has their like Facebook for work thing. And within an organization, if you set up a Yammer group, then everybody that joins that Yammer group can then post in that group. Again, similar to like a Facebook group or something like that. One person posts, other people can, other people can comment on it, and then if somebody comments, another person can reply to that comment, and it kind of creates threads, almost like a Reddit kind of style. It has really good support for multimedia stuff, like you can embed videos, you can hook it up to SharePoint and OneDrive and all that kind of stuff. It's got like a wiki page and things, so it's a really good way to get everybody kind of on the same page in a, as I said, like an asynchronous manner, so that people don't have to respond right away. What I think one of my favorite things about the way that Yammer works is that it doesn't require that you actually open the Yammer web page or app or whatever to interact with it. If you get an alert in your inbox that says somebody posted a new thing, if you've got the default is that everybody gets an email every time somebody posts a new thing. And so then if they want to comment on that, they can actually add the comment directly from within Outlook. They don't even have to open the website. So I love that the fact that it's got this really low friction way of getting people who may not ever want to open that thing in a new web page, or there's a lot of people where that amount of friction is enough to keep them from ever interacting. So the super low friction of being able to add the comment right from there inside the email, I think that gets an opportunity for people who are maybe a little higher ranking in the organization, who normally who normally really only just read their emails and respond to emails and they're in meetings all day. This gives them an opportunity to be part of that conversation without actually having to dive in and invest in putting a bookmark in their browser and that kind of thing. So I really like it for that. So of course, like I said, you could do this in many different tools. You could do it in Yammer, you could do it in Slack, you could do it in Teams, you could do it in SharePoint, however you want. But I really like Yammer for this, and so I hope this is not one of those products that Microsoft ends up killing off, because it's working out really well for us.
I don't know a ton of people who use it at this point, so I do hope that they'll continue to support it. But I feel like it's started to get a little bit replaced by like Teams and other stuff in terms of those conversational threads and forums and things like that. So yeah. Well, we'll see. And if I end up having to switch us to Teams, then I guess that's what I'll do. But for right now, it seems like this works out pretty well. So, all right, we'll keep on going here. So that was the first 4 founding principles. The next one here, 5th, we have no instructors or students. We all learn from each other. This is a non-hierarchical subunit of the organization, and in fact, we basically tell everybody that comes in the door, leave your preconceptions about everyone in this room's rank in the organization aside. So like when you come in here, all that doesn't matter. Everybody that's in here is a peer, including me, including the subject matter experts or the champions, all that kind of stuff. We're there to learn from each other. My role, I try to frame it as I'm really there just to help everybody get on the same page in terms of putting us on the same date when we meet, and kind of helping coordinate what the topics are going to be and things like that. So, but I'm not the teacher. I am one of the people who will sometimes be
teaching things, but we encourage everybody to consider themselves both teachers and students. They're neither one or the other exclusively.
The
So
student has become the master, and the master has become the student.
right. And I've already learned quite a few things from the people that, who, if this had been a traditional hierarchical student-teacher relationship, that I would have considered them a student. But it's just it kind of depends on what it is that you need to learn. For me, I have a lot more technical background and not as much expertise about these individual business units and the kind of the structure of their data and the little quirks about it and stuff like that. So I learn all kinds of things about the data that they're generating within their business units and ways that impacts the organization. Because I'm kind of, otherwise I'm in my little world in IT. Yeah, I don't know what's going on in the organization. So getting in these groups is actually allowing me to learn more about how the organization as a whole works. So really, I mean, it really is a bidirectional relationship, which is, this is the only kind of bidirectional relationship we want, right?
Right, exactly. The only type.
Right. So, well, that and bridge tables. Anyway, so founding principle number 6, we believe the only stupid question is the one that goes unasked. So plenty of people are going to feel kind of hesitant to ask a question because they think, oh man, I don't know, I don't want to look like an idiot. No, don't worry, we're all here to learn. And they might say, well, it's probably a question that somebody's asked before. And I say, you know what? One of the best ways to enhance memory is repetition. So if the question has been asked before, it doesn't matter. We'll answer it again. And hopefully the people who are hearing it the second time will remember it better. So founding principle number 7, we vote on dates and topics for upcoming events. As mentioned, this is pretty much a democratic process. There's really nobody that gets to say, this is what we're going to do. If I send a survey out, try to get as many people to respond as possible, and whichever date and time gets the most votes is the one that we end up doing. Same thing for topics. So, and then last, founding principle number 8, our members are encouraged to network and build intra-organizational relationships. And this kind of goes to that whole, drilling tunnels through the silo walls to try to overcome the resistance to the flow of data and the flow of information and the flow of knowledge between these different org units. So, all right, Reed, did you have anything here you wanted to add before we continue?
And not so far, other than I think I've said the stupid questions thing for years in classes, because you so often hey, I know this is a stupid question, but nope, the only stupid question is the one that goes unasked. And it's a cheesy thing to say, but I feel it has to be repeated because so often people will start this is a stupid question. No. We want stupid questions because every time you ask that gives other people permission to themselves in a way to oh, okay, somebody's already asked, now I can maybe feel a bit more relaxed to do that. So the more questions asked, the more comfortable the room gets, and then the more conversations can happen.
I totally agree. All right. So next we're going to go to the recruiting process. I call it the calling all data ninjas. So what does it take to identify the type of person who might be interested in joining this? Then as I mentioned, our Yammer group is private. So how would I know which people to invite? Well, first I created a Microsoft Forms survey designed to gauge the respondents' interest in working with data, their availability in general, kind of like what their schedule looks like overall, and their current skill level as they assess it themselves. Then I used Rui Romano's PBI monitor report to give me a list of all the users in the organization with active Power BI Pro licenses, and then filtered it down to only the users who, I filtered out any users that didn't have activity logs in the previous year. So then with that list, I now had a pretty good, kind of, all right, these are our active users. And then I said, all right, who are the power users in this group? The top 20% of them by average monthly activity count. And then those are the people that I sent the Microsoft Forms survey link to, and asked them to say, hey, I noticed that you're a pretty active Power BI user. Wanted to invite you to become part of our community of practice and see what kind of interest you have in various different topics. Tell me about your skill level, that sort of stuff. So that worked pretty well. I actually got a lot of responses, and the very first workshop that we had was attended by 18 people. And this is an organization that has 200 and change employees. So
I'm guessing this. Did you use Midjourney to generate this image?
I used the Bing image generator.
Oh, okay. Because I'm
Yep.
looking like, oh, cool, anime characters. Wait, the eyes look a little okay. This is
Yeah,
AI
yeah,
generated.
yep. Everything looks a little wonky. So and the resolution's all like they cap it out at like 1024 by 1024.
Yep.
So
Nice.
but I needed a little visuals to spice everything up. So you'll actually see similar stuff on my blog if you read my the Data Dojo blog series. I'm using a lot of similar graphics from that as well. So
And
all right.
just as one just brief funny anecdote about this. So apparently, there's enough AI generated images that it's now actually feeding back into the algorithm to generate AI generated images. So it's basically inbreeding itself, and it's kind of
We're gonna
funny.
have some weird looking art.
Yes, but I do think that there's enough of it there that it's cycling back into it, and so that the recursion is going to get weirder and weirder. But yeah, and the best comment on top of that is like the AI is inbreeding with itself. I'm like, yep, yep,
Yep.
cool.
Yep. We're gonna have the royal family of art. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So at the first workshop, first off, we had to start with introducing everybody because these are a lot of these people. This is the first time they've ever met each other, and then we talked about like why each of us is here, and why it matters to them individually, and then we also talked about like what from my perspective, why it's important for all of us to get together, what we should be doing here, and why it matters to the organization as a whole. We also got into things like talking about the importance of speed and accuracy in data analysis, and of course, those are really subjective terms. And so we get we want to talk about what's speed, what is this agile thing that we keep hearing about. For those in the organization who keep hearing the word, but they're not working with it in any capacity, so they just think it's another buzzword. What is accuracy? Bad data, what is considered bad data, how is bad data different from missing data, that sort of thing. We got into some of that as well. We also got into talking about the data-driven decision makers in the organization, and kind of starting off with what those people frequently know off the bat in terms of these are the things they already know because of their expertise in their business unit, their subject matter expertise. And then oftentimes their blind spots, what the stuff that they don't know about because they haven't been able to get deep enough into the data to extract those insights. So there's plenty of things that are surface level that are pretty easy to spot if you just look at the raw numbers. But there's also a lot of stuff that's hidden beneath the surface that oftentimes is just as valuable, if not more so, than the things that you can easily identify at the surface.
I feel like number 3 really hits on that idea where like for any project, the client there's 3 things that client wants. They want it fast, they want it good quality, and they want it cheap. You're only ever allowed to pick two of those things. Yep.
Yep. And that's kind of why I wanted to cover that stuff in one, the first time we're getting together, is because I want to make sure that everybody understands the relationship that these things have with each other, and how anytime that you emphasize on one, you end up by necessity having to de-emphasize one of the others, and so kind of how to make sure that we all get on the same page, so that when we have to make one of those sacrifices in order to achieve a better result in one other category, that we all know what we're trading off in order to get that result.
Exactly.
So, right. Okay. Moving on here. So still in the first workshop here, we talked about the current paradigm and the state of data analysis at DMU. This is kind of like the grand survey of everything, and sort of zooming out and letting people in the individual business units kind of see where everything is all structured, talking about like, oh, here's what our data warehouse looks like. Here's where that data is imported into various different places in the Power BI ecosystem. Here's some of the data sets that we have out there that are available for access for people who want to start kind of crunching those numbers right now. And also talking about the weaknesses of that current paradigm. A lot of the stuff that was, this is stuff that is legacy reports, legacy data models that were built before I got there by people who, it's pretty obvious looking at the way they did it. They had not learned anything about best practices and that sort of thing. Fortunately, as an organization, we're small enough to where our data isn't big enough to really cause performance problems there, but it can sometimes cause some wonky, funky behaviors depending on slicer selections and things like that. So kind of pointing out, look, this stuff is out there, but it's right now it's in a state of, it works for some people, but if you try to use it, we can't really guarantee that it's going to work out well for your your use case. And so then that's when we kind of transition over to what is my vision for the future of the organization, but also to solicit feedback from the people who are in attendance and say, where do you see your business unit going in the next 5 years? What would be important for your individual org units to become more successful in using their data and to make better decisions. So, and of course, we also talked about how do we think we should get there? We have our like ideal state, our desired state. What is the transform between current state and actually call it the vector, right? Like what's the vector between those two? So, and then finally, I actually had by this time I had already identified 4 people who were going to be in attendance there who were already heavy users and actual report developers using Power BI. So people who were enthusiastic about what they had already been using up to that point, and were also enthusiastic about the concept of the Data Dojo. So kind of using them as a look what's possible, and also look how important it is for everyone that's either attending this today or maybe watching the recording later to start attending these on a regular basis. So that was kind of what I did there, and that went over really well. And I think that's actually evidenced by the fact that for workshop number 2, we actually had even better attendance than workshop number 1. We had 20 some people this time around, and the people who joined that time were actually higher ranking in the organization. So these are people who were maybe the supervisors of some of the people who had attended the first time, and those people had gone back to their boss and said, "You really need to come check this out." So, so in workshop number 2, we started talking about getting a little deeper into data analytics and what makes it tick. So talking about the 5 types of data analysis. There's descriptive, which is what happened, where, and when. This is pretty much, I think 90% of BI that I see out there falls under category 1 here, because for the most part, that's where people stop, because they don't realize that they can go further. And that's kind of one of the things one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up in that first meeting was, look, almost all of us are stuck right here, but look at all this other cool stuff we could be doing, and imagine how much more important it is to do these things, especially speaking to them in the language of medicine. How helpful is it when does it get you any closer to a cure when your doctor writes down your chart? No.
No. Yeah.
You need to go through the diagnostic process. Then you need to get your genetic testing and figure out what are your, do you have any mutations in your genome that are likely to predispose you to this or that, you need to go to the pharmacy, get you some prescriptions, right? And, you also need to take care of your, your mental health, cognitive capacity, and that sort of thing. So this is I try to frame it like that. And so anyway, I guess we can move past this here. I think I've beat this dead horse here, but
I do like the idea of thinking through this. I mean, just stepping back even from a project perspective, I think it's very important to often just ignore the visuals, ignore the data. What are the questions you're answering? If you look at something and you walk away from it, is there any decision that you can make? And even if you don't know the question, okay, fine. Well, questions might even be in the second part. What is an action you would like to take for your company? Well, I want us to do better. Define that. Well, I want sales to increase. Okay, what are the questions needed for that? So you really, it's it's peeling back the layers of the onion to get to that, the depth of information needed to understand, what do you need from this?
Absolutely. And this is one of I think that this is actually one of the things that a lot of stakeholders and organizations have a really hard time grasping when we try to bring this up with them. A lot of them say, well, I just want to see these numbers. It's but why do you want to see those numbers? I think the most common example of this is when they say, can you give me a table? They're basically asking for an Excel sheet. And it's well, but you're going to do something with that, right? Are you going to sum that column? Are you going to average it? Are you going to get the standard deviation? What are you doing with that? Are you going to look for the highest value, the lowest value? There's something you're doing with that data that's going to help you make a better decision for the business. But it sounds like you're asking me to give you the beginning of the process. Can I just help you skip all the steps and give you the thing that you need at the end, so you don't have to spend all that time mashing up the data yourself and potentially, making a human error here or there where you end up fat fingering one of the cells or something, and we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So and I think this is again one of the benefits of working in an organization that's mostly doctors and medical industry types of people. They're well aware of their human limitations, and so nobody ever says I don't fat finger digits. So
yeah.
Right. So it's that's nice. But to actually get them to realize that that's what I'm trying to help them avoid. I mean, I'm still struggling with that. I've been at this organization 2.5 years, and there's still people who are asking for tables, and so I think this is one of those things where, as an industry, BI professionals, we need to start educating collectively. We need to start educating our decision makers and organizations about the capabilities that we have with this technology. They're still thinking we're stuck on SSRS. They're still thinking we're stuck on crystal reports or whatever. Like that. They don't know what's available, and like they've seen dashboards with like the needle gauges and all that kind of stuff, but they don't realize how effective that stuff could be if we use their data to put it in front of them and say, what if we were to put this in a situation where, hey, maybe you don't even have to look at this report. If everything's in the green, there's nothing you need to do. So you can go about doing the other things in your job. These things are really only ever going to target one aspect of any person's job. This is a small organization. Nobody does just one thing. So can we give them something that could just alert them when there's something that they need to do, rather than have them have to check the report every single day and then add up the numbers in their head and that sort of thing? So, yeah. Anyway, so that's emphasizing the rest of this stuff and saying, look, we're pretty much all stuck here. Let's see if we can get to these other types of data analytics, because this is where the real value is. So, all right.
So I did actually, I missed this question as I was talking to you, but just George Squalis was just wondering, was the attendance counted as work time for the attendees?
Yes. Yep. Okay. So I think it's probably going to vary organization to organization. Fortunately, my organization, we have a very it's people are encouraged to do a continuing education as much as possible, and there's actual time allocated for that. And so this was considered continuing education for anybody who wanted to attend, and it will continue being that way for anybody who attends future events.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. So this is the data analytics cycle. I've actually seen this cycle described with anywhere from 5 to 8 steps. And so I honestly don't know if any of one of them is more correct than any of the others. This is the one I used in this workshop to describe the process, and basically saying, look, this is where you start. You start with your requirements gathering, you ingest and process the data, you explore the data, then you go and start doing the analysis on it, develop your first solution, then hand it off to some stakeholders and say, hey, what do you think of this? All right, well, there's some problems, all right? We need to optimize those, and then start all over again. So I wanted to get everybody familiar with the concept that nothing's ever done. It's always just good enough to continue, and sometimes it's good enough that we can say, okay, we can move on to another project for a while and come back for the next revision of this thing next quarter or next sprint or that sort of thing. So, all right, we'll move on here. So that was the first part of workshop 2. The next bit we got into was talking about structured versus unstructured data. This is kind of getting a little bit deeper into the weeds, but a lot of people are when they hear data, they just think binary. They go, oh, just ones and zeros. They don't realize that that there's different types of data and different structures of data, and whether certain types of data can be used, or like the difficulty of using certain types of data, or the difficulty of turning certain types of data or formats of data into usable analytics. It's much easier to take a single table and put that into a report than it is to go grab this table from this data warehouse, this CSV file from over there, hit an API over there, go grab something from FTP. There's many moving parts, and DMU, we have very few in-house developed solutions. So we have lots of vendors, and our data comes from lots of different vendors who all have different ideas of the best way to provide us with the data that we need from them. And so we've got some that are database exports. We've got some that are, they don't offer anything other than telling that, that we can go and export stuff manually one at a time in CSV. We have some that have APIs. It's all over the board. And so getting people familiar with the idea that one data request is not necessarily like any other data request, and really a lot of it depends on the structure and format of that data. So, and then we had one of the people who did a testimonial in workshop, the first workshop, came and actually gave his own presentation to the Data Dojo, and this is one that he had actually given at an internal conference for his own college within the university. They had something kind of like a retreat where they were, all these different sort of subunits within this college were all talking about what they were doing and helping exchange ideas and collaboration within that college. So he took that presentation he had given there and he brought it to the Data Dojo and said, here, this is what I've been able to do with the knowledge that I've gained through working with, he and I had been working together at that point for about a year. And so a lot of stuff that I'd been able to teach him individually, that I hope to then also bring that information to the other members of the dojo. He was able to show this is the impact that this learned knowledge can have in a business unit if you apply it. And like being a Power BI report developer isn't even his full-time job. He's I want to say his job title is like a curriculum coordinator or something like that. So his education background completely, like that's what he studied in school and everything. And he's basically a person who helps design and facilitate the use of technology in the curriculum. So, but he's doing this stuff on the side because it doesn't take him that much time and it provides a lot of value to the business. And he's the one that knows the most about his business unit, and so he's best positioned to turn curated but somewhat still raw, or curated but mostly just tabular form data into usable insights for his business unit. So so we'll move on here. So this is where we get to my failures. Our first major setback. So do as I say, not as I do, I suppose. We're getting to the point where I'm going to tell you what not to do here in a minute. So so I made 3 big mistakes after our second workshop. One was an inconsistent schedule. Another was inconsistent engagement with the members of the Data Dojo, and the third, letting perfect be the enemy of good. And we're going to get to that in a little bit here. There were other contributing factors to the result that happened from these mistakes. We do have a brand new campus that is actually pretty much just had a soft opening like a couple weeks ago, and so most everybody in the organization has been just burning the candle at both ends, trying to get this new campus up and running, and just projects all over the place that are related to the new campus. So there's an increased project load across the board for everyone in the organization, and so everybody's really busy. Not an excuse, it is a reality. And also the IT department, we recently lost our project manager, who really helped kind of shield me from a lot of the individual requests and helped kind of like prioritize our backlog and that sort of thing. So that also took up a lot of my time. Again, not a valid excuse, but these were other contributing factors. There's always contributing factors, but so to get into the first mistake, we had lots of momentum after the second workshop. There was just all kinds of buzz about it. People were talking in Yammer, and people were proposing ideas. People were asking questions. That was really great. I was thrilled with the fact that people were going to the Yammer group and saying, "Hey, I'm having a problem with this or that." And it's like, and sometimes it would get answered by one of the champions. By the time I got there, somebody else had already answered. It's like, man, this is great. But I made the mistake of trying, I was going, man, this is great. I need to keep building on this. I need to like get more attendance next time. All right, I'm going to try to find a date that works for everybody. Huge mistake. This is like the ramp up to the new campus. Everybody's schedule was even busier than usual. There wasn't a chance that I was ever going to be able to get increased attendance as everybody's getting busier. But that was a mistake in my thought process. I wasn't even thinking about the fact that there's this new campus and that people would be busier. And I was going like, wow, why is everybody so busy? Scrolling down the calendar, looking for openings that would work for everybody. And so I kept delaying the next event pretty much indefinitely. I kept going like, man, this at some point this has got to let up. These people are going to be available to get together at some point. The worst problem about this, it wouldn't have been a big deal if I had just been delaying it, trying to, figure. But if I had said to everybody, if I gone to the Yammer group and said, hey, I'm just trying to see if I can find a date that works for everybody. Like, I'm looking at everybody's calendars. It looks like there's not any like overlapping. Can everybody like? I didn't even say any of that. And that was my biggest mistake here, was failing to communicate about this process, about like me trying to find time that would work for everybody with the members. And I think that because I didn't say anything, a lot of them probably got the impression that that this had just kind of petered out, and that it was like a flash in the pan, and that maybe they thought, oh, James, he's moved on to some other thing now, like this isn't the shiny new thing anymore. In reality, this has been a passion of mine, and I wanted to get it as many people able to experience it as possible. So it was actually my passion for it that kind of like led me down the wrong path, and we'll actually get to that as one of my, I think it's mistake number 3, that but we'll get to that in a moment here. Mistake number 2 was inconsistent engagement. This is I didn't actually keep recruiting new members. The process that I started with was looking at activity logs to figure out who's using Power BI. But that only gave me the starting list. And by the time I actually had sent the invitations out, there was 2 or 3 people that didn't even work at the organization anymore. And I imagine at this point that there's several of those people who maybe originally had indicated some interest in the thing. Maybe their priorities have changed, or they've been promoted, so they're no longer going to be able to be in a position to do some of this individual content creation themselves. But by failing to consistently keep up, looking at the activity logs, sending new invitations out, I was not seeding the pool with potential new members, and so by default, I would end up having some attrition, and that was a huge mistake for me to not continue building that pool. So I also was not doing a good job of staying in contact with the existing members. I was going in and Yammer, and maybe like once every month or two, kind of like saying something about some interesting new thing that happened with Power BI, some new feature that became available, or here's how to do this with some certain types of slicers and that sort of thing. But it wasn't consistent. I didn't have a schedule for it, and I didn't really follow up on that kind of stuff, and I wasn't requesting, like actively reaching out to people saying, hey, tell me about some topics you want for next time. So failing to seed the community discussion with the new material, failing to ask them for their opinions on things, what they want to see next, that sort of thing. So this is kind of an expansion on that, failing to reach out earlier. That was more about the schedule, but in general, I was just poor at communicating during this time. So, all right. And then mistake number 3, this is letting perfect be the enemy of good. This is a phrase a lot of people have probably heard before. I had a really grand vision for our next event. Because the first of 2 events had gone really well, I wanted to really blow their minds with the third event, and I wanted it to be like something that would just practically make the papers the next day. And I had plans for this. For a while, I had actually been collaborating with a couple of guys who made a really cool SharePoint and Power Apps based app called Power BI Version Control. This is Steve Campbell and Anthony, help me out here, Escobedo.
Yep, that's right.
Yep. And this app is really, really cool. It basically allows people to have a centralized Power BI artifact library, essentially PBIX files in SharePoint, and to be able to check them out to one person at a time. And when one person has it checked out, nobody else can edit it. When they're done making the changes, they save the file, close it, go check it back in, and then it takes that file and makes it disappear off of their hard drive and puts it back in SharePoint. And so this is a really cool app. Unfortunately, it had a bug in it that was because of something that Microsoft had changed on the back end, and I think it was something they changed in the Power Apps, the way that Power Apps works with service principals and usernames, and they were no longer matching up. And so I developed a bug fix for that, and I was like, wow, when we get this bug fix out into production, then I really want to make that the focus of our next workshop. So I was going like, man, this release is going to be awesome. I'm gonna roll it out for everybody that wants it in their organization. Anybody that wants the ability to start working on reports, they'll have a version control system. It won't be like Git, but it will be a type of version control, and would allow multiple people in a single team to work on the same files without stepping on each other's toes.
Any
However,
version of version control, honestly, and like
yeah,
like
yeah,
Steve Campbell's tool has been great up until we got Git, but like some amount of history is absolutely necessary.
yep.
I usually, like, just as an anecdote on that, like I either recommend just like OneDrive as a minimum. Like if people want to go enterprise, honestly, still one of my favorite things that I continuously like to plug as a product is like Power BI Sentinel works really, really well for versioning every single artifact and object that you have in the service, and it dumps it in Azure Blob Storage automatically. Even if your developers aren't doing it themselves, you can do it for them. That is
Yep.
one thing that I like. Yeah.
We actually have Power BI Sentinel at Des Moines University, so that's been nice. But I was kind of thinking like it would be nice to be able to give these people the ability to go back and roll back to their to a previous update for themselves without having to come ask me to go download the something from a backup for them. So again, focusing on self-service. The idea of Power BI version control really ties in really well with the idea of the Data Dojo. This the business unit driven data analytics. So, but of course, I also failed to anticipate the usual delays in any software release pipeline, and we had delays in releasing Steve and Anthony and I had delays in releasing the next version of the Power BI version control, and it actually went on for several months. By the time that the update that new version was available, which is just very recently, as you mentioned, Git integration was basically coming out. So it's almost made this kind of irrelevant. I still think within my own organization, most of the people are going to be using this are not going to be comfortable with doing things with Git, and I'd like the solution to not require any additional button clicks beyond just checking out and checking in. So I'll probably still try to get this going in a future workshop. But yeah, the delays with me trying to wait for this thing to become available, and between this and trying to get everybody on the same schedule, it's been, I don't know, 9 months or something like that since the last one of these things, and the first two were within a month of each other. So from the perspective of somebody who went to those first two ones, they probably thinking that this is completely done. And because I was so ineffective at communicating what's been going on behind the scenes, they don't have any reason to think otherwise. So my perfectionism obstructed our progress, and that's I think something everybody really ought to look out for.
Diminishing returns, right?
Yep. So, and in this case, not even any returns. It'd be one thing if I was actually getting some returns, but I was basically delaying returns while trying to reach perfection, while still not actually getting anything. It's kind of like building a plane. It won't ever get off the ground until you've actually finished completing it. You can't build it while it's in flight. So
exactly.
I really love this quote from Helmuth von Moltke, a German general from World War I. He said, "No plan of operations can, with any certainty, reach beyond the first encounter with the enemy." And this quote's been attributed to several other historical figures, but I'm pretty sure he was the first. So yeah, so I have to really keep that kind of thing in mind and say, look, that doesn't matter how well I plan for anything. I have to anticipate that something's going to change, and the more involved, the more intricate my plans become, the more time I've spent making them, the less time I'm actually doing them. And so I think the lesson I'm learning here is that my plans ought to start with the things that I can do quickly and get it out the door, make an impact. So, all right, so that actually leads us into the Data Dojo Strikes Back. This is where my strategy for getting everything back on track here. So some of this stuff, it's things I've begun doing already, and some of it is things that I am like sort of still putting together. But we're going to start with the Art of War, Sun Tzu, strategy first, then tactics. So I have to beware of my tunnel vision masquerading as laser focus, thinking that I'm like getting a lot of stuff done where I'm really just, what is it called? Rearranging lawn furniture on the Titanic, or no, rearranging deck furniture. So I need to learn to zoom out, recalibrate, and then zoom back in, and do that consistently throughout the project. Make sure that, whatever it is that I'm doing, that I'm, getting a feel for my surroundings on a consistent basis, so that I know when the situation on the ground has changed. So, and that I should be targeting attainable goals first and then setting stretch goals. And this is a great quote from Sun Tzu: "Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, and tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat." So,
I like that.
Yep. So, all right. Next, and this is where I wanted to say, all right, community practice is about two things: community and practice. One, community. So I decided, all right, you know what? This dragon has been sleeping long enough. We're gonna wake up the dragon. So my strategy is to begin scheduling events again as soon as possible. Doesn't matter how many attendees are able to make it. I'm just going to start scheduling them. And if 5 people make it, great. If it's just me doing it, I'll record it, and then people will be able to see it. So I think the important thing is getting a cadence going again. And once people see a consistent cadence, it will rebuild some of that trust, and that this is a thing that's been established that will continue going, and it's something that they can invest their own time in because they don't have to worry that it's going to disappear on them. So I am committing to posting on Yammer at least twice per week. So whether that's just saying, hey, here's the latest blog article from Microsoft talking about the latest stuff that's going on in Power BI. Here's some general concepts about data visualization, about storytelling with data. Here's information about an upcoming event that we have, whatever it is. I'm going to try to get consistent about, I'm going to post on Yammer in our group at least twice per week to try to get those conversations going and get people engaged.
Now, do you schedule any time on your calendar for that, or do you just have a reminder?
Yes, that's actually I originally had written schedule posting on Yammer at least twice a week. I don't remember why I changed it, but yeah. The next thing is to recruit 2 Data Dojo deputies. This from existing members, and I'm thinking probably that the one would be the person who had previously given their own presentation that I mentioned in workshop number 2, and I'm not sure who my other one will be, but I'm gonna pick somebody. I'm gonna try to see if I can get them involved in not just being a sort of central figure, but also helping to run these events and helping to maybe say, like, I'm not the only one who can schedule these things. If you want to propose an event, you've got a show and tell you want to do it. We all have the ability to invite each other to events, so why not? So, all right, and then I'm going to encourage members to show, again, this is show and tell their projects, not just the Data Dojo deputies, but really anyone, and make sure that it's really clear that anybody who's been working on something, doesn't matter how finished it is or unfinished, that they should show it off, and then those of us who are there who might have some suggestions for them can provide suggestions, and then everybody else can go, wow, that looks great, and give them some some affirmation. So, all right, so that's the community aspect of community of practice. The next is practice, and this is wax on, wax off, Daniel-san. This is for me. I got to drill the basics. I got to work on my leadership skills. I'm going to put some time into reading some more kind of material that's around leadership, around organizing. Also, I'm going to really dive in and make sure that I understand all of the best practices about community practice, and of course the incorporation of COP in the Power BI adoption roadmap. Make sure that I know that stuff top to bottom. Also, I'm going to be working on mastering the fundamentals. This is about stuff like event planning and project management. I have no illusions that I'm going to be a project manager. That's too many hats for me to wear. But I do need to be better about managing this as if it were a project, because there's deadlines in this. Just even though nobody's setting deadlines, if we don't get anything done by a certain date, people are going to be disappointed regardless. So I have to think about it like it's a project, and I have to be the project manager for it. So and finally, to develop my core strength, and this is basically the fundamentals of my skills and technical skills, and also in knowledge sharing. So I'm going to be working on getting more Microsoft certifications. Right now, I'm the Power BI Data Analyst Associate. I'm going to work on getting the next one. What is it? DP 500, something like that.
Yes.
So scaling up on that, and then also continue working on my my knowledge sharing skills for anyone who expresses interest. And this is actually probably the thing I'm most passionate about. I think I'm probably more passionate about sharing knowledge than I am about actual doing the data and analytics, or at least it gets me more excited anyway. So it's one of the things that actually gets me feeling a little more extroverted. I'm normally sort of introverted. So, all right. So we're now pretty much at the end of this thing. We're going to actually move on to going over resources. So this is the stuff that I'm going to hand off to Reed. I believe I sent you the links for this stuff here today.
Yep.
So these should be popping up here in the chat for anybody who's watching live. And so these first two here, this is wangertrainer.com. This is the again the person who's sort of coined the term community practice and explored the initial space of what community practices should be in general. This website will give you a great primer on that. Or is it primer? I've heard it both ways. I don't know.
Primary sounds
so then,
like, yeah.
Yep. And then we've got this one here. This is from Microsoft's Learning website. This is the part of the Power BI adoption roadmap that specifically relates to community practice. For people who are interested in learning about Power BI adoption roadmap in general, this link will take you to the part that talks about the that is the overview of the adoption roadmap, and then as you go further down into that, you'll get to stuff like the community practice, the COE, and that sort of stuff. The data volume blog. This is my blog, and if you go to this URL here, it'll actually pull up anything that I've tagged with community of practice. So that would be the Data Dojo. Anything that I do in the future that's related to, like if I blog about something with the Iowa Power BI user group, it will also go under community of practice. So that'll take you there. And then this is a link here to the PBI Monitor, Rui Romano's tool for pulling in Power BI activity logs and using that to determine who in your organization are likely candidates for people who should be invited as your, maybe your first crop of new Data Dojo members. So this is, of course, this is resources for Data Dojo organizers, and then we're going to move on to, this is resources that I provide to the Data Dojo members at my organization, and that you could use as a sort of starting point for your own. So first, I of course always provide them with the back catalog of the slideshows of any workshops that we've had, so that anybody who's joining can get caught up on our history. We also, like as I mentioned, we record the sessions, so those are always we put those up on. We have an internal site that we use for that, and I put them up on there. I put that up on Microsoft Stream, so that there's multiple places they can get access to those. And then these two files here are well, it's pretty much just a PDF and Excel version of the same file, but it's essentially I think my like greatest hits of the LinkedIn Learning and publicly available resources that people can use to learn about Power BI. And I have it sorted by sort of like the beginner stuff at the top. And so the first things it does is it talks about data visualization in general, not even talking about Power BI, but like storytelling with data, the idea of like good practices and bad practices in data visualization, things like making sure that you don't, crop the y-axis, and those kinds of mistakes that people frequently make when they're when they think they're making their report look good when they're actually misrepresenting the data, that sort of stuff. So getting those skills or that knowledge established first, and then moving into, okay, now we actually are working into the actual tool itself, Power BI. Starts mostly with data visualization, and then starts getting down into things like the Power Query and data modeling, that kind of stuff at the very end of the list. So that's my curated list, and I will update the link on my website whenever I add new resources to it as well.
Beautiful.
So,
and I think I've got all of them right into the chat, and then I'll make sure to update the description in the YouTube video as well to reference all of these.
Awesome. Sweet. Okay, so
Very cool.
that leads us to the Q&A session.
Perfect. Yep. So if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to bring those up now. I'm sure there's going to be, there might potentially be some based off of all the links, but I do have actually one from George from a little bit earlier. So let me send that up. So he wanted to know, was the university size and campus conducive toward knowing who the potential dojo candidates would be, or does the campus size and number of departments, think like Michigan State, pose a challenge?
So this is as I mentioned before, this is a graduate level only medical school. So size of campus is actually a pretty small, we're barely bigger than some high schools in terms of our campus size.
Okay.
But we also have a very, very remote friendly working environment. A lot of people in the organization are working from home 2 or 3 days a week, and in fact, a lot of people in the IT department work from home remote all the time. I'm a full remote employee, so the physical layout of the campus is not really a barrier. I mean, I've had some of these events that I've tried to host them in person. I think the first one I actually had at our first event, we had maybe 10 people that showed up in person, and the remaining 8 were virtual. And then the next one, it was like, I think it was the reverse. We had like 8 people in person, and the remaining 12 or 13 or whatever were all virtual, and I think it's kind of trending that direction. People are, it may end up being that once the new campus is all open and people are excited to be there, maybe that it will kind of shift the other direction. But it's not a big enough campus for it to impede anyone from wanting to walk across the campus and do something over there. It doesn't take like a half an hour to get anywhere on foot. It's pretty much just a hop, skip, and a jump from one place to
I
another.
think given the size of the how many people you managed to get into the dojos, given the size of the school, I think is pretty good then. To get up in that, I think your first one you said what, 15?
It was 18 attendees at
18.
the first workshop, and it was 20 some at the second one. So
it's awesome.
Yeah. So I imagine that once the third one comes around, because of my mistakes I've made there, I imagine there's probably going to be a significant attrition there for the third one. So I have to be prepared for whatever that may end up being. And like I said, if it's just me giving that presentation, I don't care. I'm going to record it, and it'll be out there for posterity, and I'll just got to keep moving. So.
And George just had to mention too that from the conversation earlier, that using the activity reports can also help with that challenge as well.
Oh, to figure out like who I should be inviting.
I think so. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned the activity logs, is because that's really my only way of because I'm not out there in those departments every day like looking to see who's using what software. The activity logs are really my only way of determining who is a likely candidate. So there may be some people who are really passionate about data who have never opened Power BI in their life. So there's a chance that I'm missing some of those people. What I'm hoping is that those people at least know some of the current Data Dojo members through their professional connections in the organization. And I'm also encouraging, this is the opposite of Fight Club. I'm telling all of the Data Dojo members to go and talk about it in their org units, make sure that, if there's anyone that I'm missing for one reason or other, that they do end up getting, they get some sort of way to get an invite. So.
Exactly. I think at least as a question from my end, what was the biggest amount of learning or component of this that required like the most effort and growth for you going through all this? And then after that, what's one like key takeaway that you'd recommend to people as like also a closing remark, just given this topic?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me was admitting when I made the mistakes that I did, and deciding that it was my fault that things had not moved forward. I think for a while there, I was deluding myself and telling myself that it was those contributing factors that I mentioned that were what was holding us back. But when I let go of the defensiveness and I stepped back, I said, you know what, there's a lot of things I could have been doing better, and then there's nothing I can do to change the fact that we've got all these new campus projects. I can't make us have a project manager that when we don't have a project manager. The things I can control are my own communication, my own scheduling stuff, my own focusing on the essentials and making sure that I keep the big picture in frame. So
I'm curious if anything related to taking responsibility when it's needed. I think it can be very hard for a lot of people. So I agree.
Yeah. That's the only thing we can do, right? Like there's
other things we can do besides taking responsibility. So, yeah.
Well, it's the only way that we can actually make progress. Like if we're stuck, or things are going poorly, there are things that are out of our control. We can either get mad about it, or we can find the things that are in our control, and do something with those and try to move the needle that way. So it's like if you're on a plane and like the pilot like goes unconscious or something like that, it's like, okay, well, I could like reach over and grab the stick. Oh, but no, the stick is broken. Okay, what can I control? All right, I can control the rudder. All right, figure out what you can control and start working with it. Figure out what you can do to move the needle in your organization. And you'll get stymied sometimes. You'll get people will block your path sometimes. Sometimes unintentionally, sometimes even intentionally. But we can't allow those situations to get us thinking that it's okay for us to stop trying. We have to keep trying, keep innovating and looking for other ways to keep moving forward. So I don't know, was that an effective solution?
I definitely wanted you to elaborate on that. So I think that was a great call out, and especially for I'm sure you're both yourself and then some of those other master student individuals went through similar scenarios, I think, probably hopefully
Mm,
with this, but like it's like there's, as you said, there's no one person in charge of all of this. Like somebody
right.
creates it, but once it's created, it becomes almost like a self-managed entity, well, within the community. Either everyone's contributing or no one's contributing, but you can't just have that one person running the show.
Right. But in order to get to the point where it kind of keeps itself going, I have to build enough momentum up first so that everybody is invested in it. And I think one of the effects of those mistakes, when I basically kind of like, I didn't keep going, I didn't keep
Hmm.
pressing forward, was that I didn't keep that head of steam built up, and then there wasn't enough consistent buy-in from everybody to keep spurring me forward. So if I build enough steam up front, then if I end up slacking off a little bit, I'll actually start catching heat from other people about slacking off, and that will actually motivate me to do. But like
Yep.
I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make doing this kind of thing is not building enough momentum forward and enough buy-in from everybody else so that it becomes so that there's some sort of external pressure to continue doing so.
Exactly.
So and everybody